Just talking with you the last bunch of years about your own Lenten journey and kind of the things that you have done, it inspired me the last couple of years to do some things too. So every year I kind of been increasingly adding different disciplines or different things. Some of them have been cold showers, some of them have been more intentional devotional time, but nothing to the extent that Memento has been. I think of like what has been good about the Memento process so far for myself is the intentionality of things. You can get into the routine of things. You miss out on opportunities to serve better, or even just the purpose of why you're doing what you're doing.
Now imagine you got all these guys leaning into hospitality. Now their friends have those families are connected with their pastor, they're connected with other people in their church and within the community. And all of a sudden in the season of Easter, it's being highlighted to them. Like this is an important season of feasting and hospitality. And now you've got guys like coming in, they might have like 3-4 meals with different families from their church that they don't even know. This could be really beautiful. You don't watch podcasts?
No. No. This one and no, because I watch cooking videos.
Okay.
Yeah, I forget what the show's name is. Brad Leone is his name on YouTube,
mm-hmm.
and I watched his stuff back when he was with Bon Appetit, and he was just a fun guy. I think he was like from New Jersey, New York, and he was up in like one of those like tall skyscrapers for Bon Appetit, and he would all these like cooking videos, and that's like what I do, like to quote unquote waste time.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of constructive wasting time, but it's fun because they're usually pretty, entertaining guys that are, that you're watching. Then it gives you some ideas for recipes. Most of the time I never make, but I'm like, I could do that though.
Mm-hmm.
I know how to do that. I could
my
ferment,
repertoire now.
Yeah. I made kombucha from watching one of his videos. It turned out okay. But like, he'll do like kimchi. He does like all kinds of fermentation. He's got a little fermentation station, he calls it.
Yeah, that's a big thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
I remember diving down that. I think there was the claim that that's one of the, right? So it's like your brain health and then your gut health. Like those two things are massive.
Yeah.
And a lot of it has to do with fermentation, right?
Yeah.
That's one of the shifts we've made where you used to eat fermented food all the time.
Right.
And now we never do.
You have to preserve it, so that, pickles, like just naturally fermented pickles are like with a salt brine or something rather than just a bunch of vinegar.
Mm-hmm.
It's always like a little bit of vinegar in there. So that's what I'll watch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because those are good, like 20, 30 minutes. Podcasts for like hour and a half.
Yeah.
So, and for some guys, somebody like me just with attention, just, always kind of shifting.
Mm-hmm.
I'll get plugged in for a while and then I'll forget to go back to it when I get busy.
Yeah.
Like I'll mark that and be like, yeah, I'll come back to it.
I remember when we did carnivore.
Yeah.
I used to watch a lot of videos for that.
Yeah.
Like one, just like understanding the meats and whatnot. But then also like one of the things with carnivore is, you'd have to get a lot of fat in, like way more fat than you're used to, which is just healthy in general. But, it's like, okay, how do I get fat in? And they, talk about like beef tallow and, like how to cut your meats in different ways so you're getting a proper amount of fat in there. And that's where like I did well with ground beef. When I tried to do like steaks,
mm-hmm.
I just don't love fatty steaks.
It's
a deficiency
like tiresome
in me.
to eat too.
Yeah.
You have to like, it's a lot of effort where you just like, after a while, you're just like.
A lot of chewing. Yeah. Working those jaws out. Like, ground beef, it's just like you throw it in there, 80-20, like you've got your proportions good. You can, whatever, throw some cheese on it, throw some butter.
You could do it loose, you could do it in patties. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
It's versatile.
Yeah. So what'd you think about sauna cold plunge steam room we did today?
Eye-opening.
Are we live by the way, Bennett? Yes. Nice. Okay. Yeah. What'd you think?
Eye-opening.
Yeah.
Literally. I mean, you're just, you kind of get lulled a bit into the sauna. You're there. Then after a while, you start to realize, no, this is getting pretty intense.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time it's time to go, you're ready to go. So you're kind of like anticipating the cold plunge.
Mm-hmm.
The first minute or two, I don't know how long. I don't know how many
in the
minutes
sauna or cold plunge.
Cold plunge.
Yeah.
I don't know how long it was, but like the first
probably
initial
4 minutes. We probably
like
did.
that first minute or two.
4
I'm
to
like,
5.
this isn't bad. This is fine.
Mm-hmm.
This is refreshing. When you get to that last minute or two, you start to feel the tingles and just the endorphin rush, and then there was like a moment where you just kind of become aware, conscious. You're just like, oh man,
yeah.
You're just like awake in a different way. So it was good. It was good.
Everything slows down. It's funny. You had the moment the same time I did.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes I'm aware of it. Sometimes I'm not. This time I definitely was, where it's, you go in, there's the shock, then you calm, and then you're kind of in a good zone. And then it just is like slowly building where now you're like really getting cold and your body's kind of going into shock. And then there's that moment where, I don't know if it actually works that way, but I mean, the endorphin rush, you do get 250% of your normal endorphin output, but sometimes it feels like it just all comes at once and then everything zones in. It's like you got a buzz. It's almost like you took a couple shots of vodka or something like that. I mean, it's a different field in that it's not like a goofiness. It's a laser focus, but it comes in like you get this buzz. Yeah. I could watch it on your face. You were just kind of like, all of a sudden your eyes were like big. I mean, you had like a little bit of craziness.
I became just aware, just a little bit more intense awareness of things, which is good to do. Cause like I said, I had, for Christmas, my dad, he bought me a cold plunge to have it at like the house or whatever. You can put it in like, if your bathtub's big enough, you could put it in there. But if you have like a kind of a walk-in shower, you can put it in there. So I put it in like our basement shower and I haven't used it yet. But it's like been in the back of my mind, you got to get that thing going. Especially when we had that cold snap in Baltimore for like the last few weeks, a couple months ago, where it was just like bitter cold. I was like, I could have went outside.
What's bitter cold in Baltimore?
Well, 20 degrees. But it was like
-2 at 8 a.m.
Yeah, we were
tomorrow
single
morning.
digits for a while though, which was
that's
like
cool.
That
That's
was kind of
legit.
end of the world
That
stuff
counts.
for us. Yeah. And I was like, that would have been a great time because I got natural ice outside to just cool the thing down, take them out. Because you get in the ice bags or like making the ice. I mean, it's time consuming. You have to like plan it.
Oh, it's tough. Yeah.
So that's why I never did it because
Before I got back to Lifetime, that's what I did. I bought a big feeding trough and had it outside, which your brother did, right, Bennett? And yeah, if you're not pumping water out of it, it gets nasty quick. Yeah, it gets rough. But so in the winter, I mean, you can do what your brother did, where you can chisel, but it's a whole. I mean, good for you. That's another experience if you're out in the cold air and then hopping in and then back out, and then it's a metal tub, so it's like burning. So that's its own thing. But in the summer, like to get it cold enough, you need a ton of ice.
Yeah.
So I bought an ice machine. Like an industrial ice machine. And then I bought bags. And then, because I had to bag it, I think 4 times a day, 20-pound bags or something. I needed like 80 pounds of ice to get it below 50 degrees for it to actually have an effect. So I had to, it was like a whole thing. Like I had to wake up in the morning, bag it.
Like the sweet number?
That's what I found, yeah. Because I would use like a food thermometer and test the water. And, I probably put 30 pounds of ice in. Yeah. And I was like, 30. And I was like, okay, that's got to be cold, right? And then I took the temperature. It was like 65.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
Okay, that's not doing anything.
I've always wondered, like, how cold is like your house tap, like cold water? If you just like turn it all the way cold.
Not cold enough. Yeah,
that's what I figured.
You got to be below 60. You got to be below 60 degrees to even like really have the kind of effects you're looking for in a cold plunge, because it has to be cold enough for your body to read it as like a shock and to say, okay, my organs, if we continue on this trajectory, it's going to be dangerous for the organs. And then it releases, I forget the name of the protein, but it's a very protective protein.
Yeah.
And there's other things too, but that's one of the big things, because when those proteins go out, then they got to do something. And these are like, this is designed for if your body's in some kind of danger, it's going to go and fix things to keep you alive for a while. So once those things are released, then they go out and then they actually start healing broken cells and stuff like that. So they go do like a lot of restorative work. So to get to that point, you need to be at least below 60. If you're below 60, you probably need to be in a little bit longer. If it's like 58, you might have to be in for 5 to 7 minutes, maybe a little longer. If it's in the 40s, like at Lifetime, it's probably 44, 45. Okay. At that, if you're in for 2 minutes, I didn't, it fluctuates a little. It was probably 45.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of work to get into the 30s.
Because this next level, compared to like just a cold shower in the morning, you can get accustomed to those pretty. I mean, some people
grow tolerant,
yeah, but you certainly do. Like by day 3 or 4, certainly by like the second week.
By cold showers,
yeah, cold showers. Yeah, you're just kind of like the initial shock is like 1 second after like 2 weeks. Whereas you do a cold plunge like that, I'm sure that initial shock doesn't really go away.
Yeah, you get more used to it, but it's never easy.
Yeah,
it sucks every time. But it's less. Your body, the initial shock is always the same.
Yeah.
But then your body knows how to deal with it a little bit more. So you get less like shivering afterwards and stuff like that, because you build up brown fat. I was
shivering after this.
No, you weren't.
I think
you were a trooper.
It was fun.
Yeah.
Well, in a different way. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was fun though.
It's my favorite thing. Yeah.
I mean, if I had access to that, I definitely would make it more of like a regular routine. So. I'll have to see what it entails to put all of that together for like home.
If you're sick, like I was talking to a guy the other day in there, and he's like, "Yeah, I haven't done it for a couple of weeks. I got sick and da da da." I was like, "Man, no, you gotta. If you're sick, hop in here."
Yeah.
That whole thing, like, put your jacket on or you're going to get sick.
Right, yeah.
Like, that's not how it works. Like, I mean, if you're soaking wet and you're outside in the cold, that's a little bit different, but no, like if you do that cold plunge or the sauna, like that's how you knock sickness out. Now, if I've got a stomach bug, that's not the case. But if I've got the sniffles, if I've got some sinus issues, that's the best thing I find.
Yeah.
Steam room helps too.
Yeah. That was nice too. That was a nice way to end it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was good. It was nice. Like you said, it was just a nice little warm hug afterwards. You went through the battle.
Yeah, it is. Oh man. So what are some like different tips and tricks and things that you've done throughout the years that you find valuable? You mentioned like fermented foods. I know you've done different workout things, but you've been kind of into different.
Yeah. I got to think because I'm the quintessential in and out of like different, dietary trends or whatever, and nothing has particularly stuck except for kind of the fasting aspect, but that, we can talk about that later. But, I've gone like vegetarian for a while, not recently, but like a couple years ago. And I say a while, like maybe a few weeks, that might be pushing it. If you ask my wife, she might say, no, it was like a week and a half or less.
Yeah.
In my mind though, it was a couple weeks. And that's at first, I think it's more mentally difficult doing the vegetarian thing than it is like actually difficult. Because you do want to crave, some meat proteins and things like that. So I've done that before. I actually, in high school, I worked at this all organic vegan grocery store / deli. So I worked in the back with this guy named Lance, who was like a professional chef, or he was, and now he's working there because he used to work at like the Hard Rock Cafe or something. So I was just like a high school kid working with him, teamed up with him to make all these like vegan organic dishes, which was fun because I learned a bunch of knife skills and just kind of prep work and stuff like that in high school from this guy. So in high school, when I worked there, which was almost pretty regularly, almost every day, I would eat like organic. And then I was into that vegan stuff for a while, not for any particular reason other than just it was being sold to me like, this is really healthy, you should do it. And I worked there and I had access to the foods. And so I've done that before. I've gone, like, I think in college I went kind of vegan for a little bit. Again, a couple weeks here or there. And I think there's some benefit to that, but you miss out on a lot of the actual just good nutrients and good food that the Lord has provided in natural occurring things. Because when you start to look into some of those vegan things, like especially the frozen vegan stuff, like we would make chickenless chicken nuggets. We didn't make it. We just got it from the box and warmed them up. I don't want to read the ingredients because I'm sure that none of it's,
Oh, yeah.
So
evil scientists.
It's concocted in the lab, and it's like, well, it's vegan, so it's healthy. And it's like, well, no. So the organic stuff, though, that's been a big swing for my wife and I for sure. Like the last probably half a year, if not more, just being more conscious about what are we eating? What are we actually putting into our bodies? We're hopeful that it's going to, transform into some, healthier living and maybe some benefits of, not having all those chemicals, which I think has occurred, just being a little bit more clear of mind. And then it's easy to do, even if you aren't eating organic, just to like, I encourage anybody, when you go to the store, just look at the back of your box or the back of the label and just read like what's in there, how many ingredients you know, how many ingredients you don't know, and like make choices off of that, what kind of fits your conscience, but always stick to kind of the more natural organic stuff. That's been like a really good thing. And then with Memento, just being more conscious about just eating well, just eating good when I am eating. So that's been a big swing, which has been nice. So, but fermented foods, I've always loved those. Like that's when I got introduced to kombucha, was at that Sinagros, it was called. It was organic spelled backwards. And actually the owner, I'm friends with him on Facebook. He just posted, they closed, I think 10 years ago now. So 2016 was their last day at that place, and they boarded up shop and they had to go somewhere else. But I remember seeing like those kombucha Synergy, like GT kombucha bottles there. And I'd never seen it before. And it was like, they just had the original flavor, which was just kombucha with no flavoring. And it had the mother in there, just kind of this weird thing floating around. And I asked him, like, what is this? And he's like, oh, it's really good for you. You should try it. So I give it a try, and it was rough, like the first time, because then you just have like, that taste is like a taste you'd never really had before.
Yeah.
It's a shock. And then you have all the things floating in there. So it took me a little bit to kind of get warmed up to it. But afterwards, I realized, actually, this is really good. And I really stopped drinking pop or soda, however you want to say it, a bunch of years ago. I'll have like a Coke maybe on Christmas or something, like a good old Coca-Cola with real sugar. Nothing beats it. But like regularly drinking pop, probably I'll have maybe half a dozen cans of pop like in a year or something. That's been a big change, and kombucha has been able to like replace that.
Yeah.
It's just like a natural, fermented soda. It tastes good. It's sweet. And then add in some other kind of those hop waters I've been getting into too.
Hop waters are good. Yeah, that was a good little Memento trick.
Yeah. It's good because then, when
just
you're...
the seltzer, but it's it's got hop flavoring.
A little hop taste in there. It's just good to kind of it's really just making those healthier choices and just trying to be more conscious about, instead of just grabbing a Sprite, grab a kombucha or something like that, And depending on the brand, there's different sugars and better brands out there, but
yeah, it's just kind of being purposeful is a nice thing to just think through your actions before you do your actions rather than autopilot.
Yeah. That's really, I think, the biggest thing when it comes to like any sort of diet or nutrition change in your life is like, because anybody can jump into something for a week or week and a half like I have, and then you forget about it because you go, all hog, and then it's just too much, but just being conscious about what you're consuming.
Yeah.
Or trying to be.
Yeah, which I've got some follow-up questions on that one. By the way, I guess I didn't really even introduce you, but Pastor Eric Bednash is a pastor in Baltimore.
Yep.
You've been there since we graduated SEM, so you've been there for like 9 years, yeah?
Yeah.
Something like that. So you're there, and then also you are the voice of Memento.
That's true.
So for all of the recordings, for those that listen to the recordings on there, you do all of those recordings, which is good. We had some questions on, hey, is that an AI recording or something? And answer's no. We thought about that. I'm like, we just want to avoid AI in general, right? Like it's taking over so many things. It's easier. I mean, you can just plug a text in and, it spits out something that sounds professional. But we said, no, like the whole point with this is, you can hear from ordained pastors in your synod that their names,
you can read them,
etc. It's not just like reading random articles and whatnot. It's like let's keep that whole process clean in that way. Yeah. So that's been good.
Yeah, it's been an adventure. It's been nice.
They throw a lot of words at you, don't they?
They do. I think they do that. It's
like some like Greek words sometimes.
Yeah, they'll throw in some Latin words. I'm not as well versed in Latin as others. So most of them I know what they are, but sometimes I'm like, I better double check this just to make sure, because it's going out there for people who probably know Latin, and they're going to be like, come on. Yeah. So, which is good because I'm growing in that, which is nice. It's nice to add a little bit more to my vocabulary, which is something that I try to take pride in learning new words as time goes on. This has really been able to step that up. So those are some of the more classical things, like some of the classical Greek writings and stuff, things that I've heard of, but I haven't really read fully myself, or whatever it is. So yeah, it's been an adventure.
Basil or Basel or
Chrysostom. Well, that's always one that it's always a fun when it comes up, because you just want to revert to basil, basil, like the herb or whatever. I don't know. Is the cord out on it? Is it basil or basil? I think people pronounce it differently.
We'd have to ask Kenny. Kenny would know.
Yeah. No, I went with basil, and every time it comes up, I have to second guess. But nope, it's basil.
Yeah. So what we're going to talk a little bit, by the way, we're going to kind of forecast what's coming up for Easter. We've been working on what that season is going to look like, and so we'll highlight that. But before that, I'm just kind of interested in what's been your experience so far. What's been beneficial? What's been challenging?
Yeah.
Kind of going through this. We're 43, 44 days in?
Yeah, something like that. But who's counting?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, I've just talking with you the last bunch of years about your own Lenten journey and kind of the things that you have done, it inspired me the last couple of years to do some things too. So every year I kind of been increasingly adding different disciplines or different things to my Lenten time, my Lenten season. And some of them have been cold showers. Some of them have been, more intentional devotional time or devotional and prayer time. And nothing to the extent that Memento has been, for myself. So this has been really good to take all of the pieces that I've had over the last, 3 years or so, and then finally put them into one cohesive package and be like, all right, now I have like a good roadmap. Now I have something to follow, to check off, and to keep me on course. So that's been good, because it's been, since what was it, February 1st? I think we initially started our Lenten disciplines with Septuagesima. And that was nice to start, just to kind of you can kind of ease into it a little bit and then kind of tighten things up as Ash Wednesday has come and gone now. And it's been nice that it hasn't been like a week or two that I was intense and then fell off, like those diets or nutrition plans that I've tried, where this is like, no, I have a roadmap. I have a brotherhood. I have a fraternity that I check in with. So I know that I have, other men doing this with me, and then also checking to make sure that I'm doing it. And not just from that kind of law aspect, but just from a caring aspect too, an accountability aspect. And it gives you the encouragement and it gives you the courage to say, no, I can do this because I want to also, these are good things. These are things that are beneficial, but also I want to keep my word to my brothers as well. So that's been nice. It's been building accountability, and it's been nice to also check in with other men as well and hold them accountable, you know, in a loving and a Christian way. So that's been a big, wonderful aspect to Memento. Is just, it's all there, and there's a support group or support team or, you know, brothers that you're walking with, which is, I think that is needed, more often than just the disciplines themselves, especially in the day and age we live. You know, just with, I think we talk about it in one of our devotions about, you know, there's always a new article that comes out about, you know, male loneliness, you know, or the fragile masculinity of loneliness or whatever, you know, the titles are. I think that's an aspect that we're trying to address like full force is, yeah, it's good to do these things for yourself. It's good to do them because they're beneficial. They help strengthen your faith. They help you grow in the knowledge of the scriptures, but also you can sharpen each other by doing that. And I think that's something that was missed out on the last couple of years for myself of just, you know, I think we've talked about things, but it wasn't like a real intentional, at least from our perspective of, hey, did you do this or that? It was just, I'm doing this, you're doing that, you know, how's it going? Okay, that's good. You know, but now it's intentional, which is nice.
Yeah, I think that's big. I mean, two things with that. One, you know, I've been very blessed. I think one of the probably my greatest strengths or blessings that have been given to me is I've always had strong friends, like guy friends, whether I go back to middle school, certainly high school, that group, college, seminary. Like I've always got guys that, you know, I can talk with and whatnot. But there was a study that came out not that long ago, and it said that the average guy has like 0.9. So in other words, like there's more guys that don't have any. Wow. Anyone that they feel like they could talk to about anything serious.
Really?
Right. So like they might have people like they could small talk, weather, talk in the narthex at church, you know, those kind of like casual type conversations. But they didn't have anyone like, I think the questions had to do with like, if your wife committed adultery, you know, do you have a guy friend that you could like reach out to and be like, hey, this happened. Like, I'm really struggling. And the average was 0.9, which means, you know, someone like you or me might be like, well, yeah, we got like 6 or 7. And a bunch of people are saying no, you know, and we had a lot of people reach out, you know, at the beginning of Memento, and they're like, hey, you know, excited for this. I can't really create a fraternity. I just don't know any guys to do this. And that was, you know, it's sad to hear, but it's also something that can be remedied, right? And that's where, you know, some intentionality on that point of saying, yeah, okay, but like we can help. And I don't just mean like bryan.stecker can help or but like we, the church, can help with that, but we have to be intentional about it. We can't just assume that guys are just going to figure it out and go do their thing. And then the other aspect is, you know, like you also have to have some intentionality of saying, okay, let's build friendships, you know, let's talk about the Vikings and whatever, like, you know, do that. But to like set aside time to be like, now talk about serious things. Yeah. And that has to be like set into the schedule. It's like when we would, you know, we'll do our Zoom calls and stuff, you know, where we'll stay up in the evening and chat, and Raylene the next day will be like, so how's Bednash doing? I'll be like, oh, he's doing good. Like how's, you know, like how, and she'll ask some kind of personal question, you know, like, how's that going? Or like, how's the marriage going? I'm like, I don't know. You know, we're talking about all the stuff that guys would normally talk about. We're not talking about like, so how are you doing, Eric?
Yeah.
But this sets that up, right? Yeah. We're like in our fraternity meeting. It's like, so how was this week going? And everyone's like, you know, I was struggling in this way. Like I'm just not waking up when I should be. I'm snoozing. I'm really tired, you know, whatever. Or like, this is a sin that I'm trying to work through, and, you know, this is how it's been going and whatever. Like that doesn't happen naturally. Like even good friends, even people that are blessed like you and I that have good friends, we don't just like whatever, sit down, have a beer, you know, whatever, go out for coffee, hop on the phone and just, you know, be like, so what are you struggling with, friend? You know, so it takes some intentionality on that front.
And it's a necessary thing. I mean, I know it can be uncomfortable for men at first, you know, and unnatural even at times, and you don't have to do it all the time. It doesn't have to be the whole, you know, your conversations with, you know, your friends every time you talk to your friends. It should happen in the fraternity meetings, of course. But it breaks the ice, and it allows those things to happen more naturally than when you do talk to them outside of a fraternity meeting or something like that, where men are more apt to say, you know, I can trust this guy, you know, and we share something in common, so we can kind of talk it through, and which is good because you can help each other through whatever it is that you're struggling with, which I think a lot of men are struggling with a lot of different things, or I should say a lot of the similar things, really, but we just don't know because we don't talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's been a big thing, just making it intentional.
Yeah. I had a friend he was at a conference, men's conference, and I think the theme had to do with like the hidden life or something like that.
Okay.
So I think the speakers were kind of grandiose examples of it, you know, but it landed the point that's kind of like, everyone's got these kind of secret struggles and they just kind of keep it to themselves, know, and the whole point is those things have to be brought out into the light. And that's why you have things like individual confession, absolution, to where, don't just kind of tell the narrative in your mind, but go and have a confidant and a pastor that, has been placed into this position, has taken a vow of silent, like, he can't be called before court and give an answer unless you tell him like, I'm planning on going and doing this horrendous thing. That's a little bit different than an actual confession. So like that's the kind of structure that plays out, but it does take a kind of comfortability with a group to kind of like let those things be revealed. Yeah. And then, like you said, like most guys are struggling with similar vein things. I mean, you can go through the 7 deadly sins or whatever and say, okay, there might be gluttony, there might be lust, might be avarice, might be pride, whatever, and you find like, oh yeah, like I've struggled with this in the past, or I'm struggling with this now. And then you can kind of talk through that. And it takes away a lot of the power of that, of those hidden sins that cause a lot of anxiety.
I mean, and the cool thing is, hopefully what happens is too, and from those meetings and those discussions that guys have with each other, that it would bring someone the comfortability to go to their pastor and say, hey, I've talked with my friends about this, but I really want to, do a little bit deeper, more intentional, spiritual addressing of this, and then you have that pastoral care too that can come in. So hopefully it is a wonderful thing for the church in general, just to allow and give the pastor more access to kind of work on the things that the pastor's called there to do, which is give pastoral care, because otherwise, if it's kept in secret, you don't talk to your friends about it, you might go to your pastor, but you might not, depending on the relationship that you have with him, you might not feel comfortable. Whereas if you have already broached that conversation with somebody you're comfortable with, you should be comfortable with your pastor. But if you aren't, then you might be able to go and talk with him about it. And he might have some extra, advice or consoling or whatever the case may be. And so that's a wonderful thing too, is just the Lord doing his work through his shepherds and through his flock too, all the Christians, the priesthood of believers, and then also having the pastor there as well. So I think, it can be a wonderful, I know it can be a wonderful thing. And we've had some good conversations in our fraternity meetings too. I'm not going to get into all the details here. But I think what was it last week or the week before? I think we were talking, and one of the guys brought up just perspective and shifting your perspective and viewing people not as problems. Yeah, problems to be fixed, problems to solve, but people to serve. And then he kind of relayed that into how he views his wife as well, because as guys we want to fix everything. Not that we're trying to fix our wives or anything like that, but fix the situation or whatever it is, rather than viewing them as someone to serve, and I think that can happen to pastors a lot too. Sometimes you view your congregation as, here, we have all these issues going on, challenges. How do I fix them, rather than how can I serve the people here through them? Yeah, there are some issues and challenges you have to fix when it comes to building problems or whatever it is. But that perspective shift, that was great to have that conversation. That kind of birthed from just having a fraternity meeting, just kind of sharing things that have been beneficial in our own personal lives that could be beneficial to the next guy. So that was great, because I took that. It's something like I think I've always known. I think that they definitely teach you that at seminary, but it's good to have that refresher, that reminder, like, oh yeah, I'm not here to fix everything. I am here to serve though. Yeah. Well, I think it's a good testament that, this happens all the time, right? Where I'll know something, but bringing something from just like knowing it to executing it, it takes a lot of intentionality, and it usually takes a lot of reminders. And sometimes you can learn the hard knocks way from just, sprinting into a wall over and over again, where like you recalibrate and like then do it finally the right way. But those fraternity meetings are a good example where like when iron sharpens iron, right? And when you're able to talk through these types of real things, good advice comes up, and it's like you said, it's not that point in particular very much helped me. And I was like, I should probably like just intentionally serve my wife more. It wasn't like groundbreaking, like we'd never heard it before, but it was I wasn't thinking about it the previous week or the week before that, or, so it's like,
yeah, if you would ask me like, are you supposed to like fix your spouse or are you supposed to serve your spouse? Well, okay. But naturally guys go to, I've got to always be fixing these issues. And like you said, it's not even, you're not necessarily thinking I need to fix my wife, but it's like, you're just thinking I need to fix whatever this is. I need to fix whatever that is. And that gets in the way often of just kind of thinking about how you serve. And it's all of those little micro reminders as you have relationships in a community or brotherhood.
Yeah. Well, again, I think it goes back to that just intentionality in things. I mean, and that's what, going back to your initial question, I think of like what has been good about the Memento process so far for myself, personally speaking, is the intentionality of things. I mean, we might have touched on it a little bit ago, but I think the same thing can be true in any pastoral setting, just coming from, a pastor serving in Baltimore. You can get into the routine of things, which is good to get into a routine, but if you're just in the routine without thinking about it, you miss out on opportunities to serve better, or even just the purpose of why you're doing what you're doing. So having those intentionalities are just really important. So that's been a big one, I think, for myself with Memento. It's just hyper kind of fixating and focusing things on, no, this is the task at hand. This is what matters, and it's good to have recalibration is good sometimes. I think you need it every once in a while.
Well, yeah, kind of two thoughts with that. I mean, the one, lots of people be like, well, I think they assume like when I'm going through Memento, like easy peasy, like that's not the case, right? It's like I struggle like everybody else, particularly waking up early. It's just been a bore this time for whatever reason. Well, we've had some sickness in the house and stuff, and kids, and rough nights and all of that. But having tried to do like different things in the past, carnivore and different Lenten things or whatnot, it's like if you just leave it up to you, for the most part, there's exceptions to this for sure. I know some people that are exceptions to this, but for the most part, you're going to do it for 2 weeks, and there's going to be a legitimate excuse that comes in, and you're going to do that excuse because it's a legitimate like exception or whatever, and then like you just kind of trail off, and like the motivation kind of dies. So it takes like that. This is what you do today. You've committed to this. You didn't have to commit to this. You could have committed to this, or this, but you chose these things. So then you commit, and then like other people are doing it. Like you said, if it's just me saying whatever, like I'm going to do 100 push-ups a day. If I don't do 100 push-ups on the third day, like, okay, like I let myself down, and I'm like, you're okay, Brian. Like, don't worry. Like you're off the hook. Like, okay, that's the internal dialogue. But, when you've got, thousands of other guys that are like doing these things, it's like, yeah, like let me just sit down and read your devotion.
Yeah.
Right? Read this scripture or catch up from yesterday. There's days that you fall behind and you catch up or whatever. And it's like, it's not, like you said, it's not a law thing. It's not like I think they're going to be angry, but it's like, come on, like let's do this with the guys.
I just realized that, because I've been thinking about this for some reason randomly the last like few months. I wrestled in high school. I wrestled my whole life, and then I wrestled in high school and then a little bit in college. And reflecting back on that time of like making weight, waking up, because I woke up early today to fly out here, and I haven't woken up that early in a bitter cold, weather since like high school or college, when you have to wake up at like 3:34 to get on the bus to go to the tournament or whatever. And you're wrestling at that time, you're fasting because you're cutting weight, you're trying to make weight, so you're weak and you're cold. And just thinking about, I did that for like 4 to 6 years and didn't even think twice about it. And there's like intentionality behind it. And it wasn't just me holding myself accountable. It was, I have my team. I mean, granted, you're the only one out there on the map, but you have your team that you earn points for. You got guys that they made weight. So if I don't make weight, then I'm letting them down, and so having that intentionality behind it made those very difficult, tasks that I had to do to make weight, or just to be in that kind of physical condition during those cold months, easy in a sense. And the same thing was I've kind of correlated that to Memento as well. I'd feel like I'd be letting myself down, because I said I would do these things, but I would also be letting my brothers down as well, because I said I'd do these things, and they're good things. They're good things that form me to Christ and can. So when the intentionality's been there, essentially is what it is. So that's the thing that I've been holding true to throughout this process. This last month or month and a half or whatever it is just thinking about like, I used to do some of those hard things, and I got soft in my older years, after college, and realized, I don't have to do this anymore. I don't have to make weight. I don't have to wake up at 3:30, 4 in the morning to do this or that, but I could. Why not? what are the benefits behind it or whatever. And obviously they're numerous for Memento, so I won't get into them at the moment. But.
Yeah, the Western man certainly has a unique need for these things. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if you've traveled internationally, but it's really apparent. Like, I've done more probably in like Africa, and obviously, like those communities are just very like natural,
Yeah.
right? Like people don't have their palaces that they go back to and like shut their garage door and like do their life on their own. Like, they live in normal houses on worldly standards,
Yeah.
right? Not suburban mansions that we like live in. So that forces, like, they're just outside and the weather's nicer, right? So I mean, they're just outside. They're always in the community. So there's, things are public pretty quickly when things go awry, And I remember, Dennis Meeker was the pastor and missionary over there that we would work with in Kenya, and he would always know, he'd be like, yes, so-and-so said that, like, this is going on in so-and-so's life. I got to go, deal with this. And it's like, everything was like very much out in the open. Like so-and-so's back on alcohol, and it's like, how'd they know? Well, like, he doesn't get to just like sneak into his house and like be away from everyone from 2 weeks or whatever, just doing his own thing. Like, everyone just knows, right? So we don't have that. So it does take some intentionality, because you can just sneak off and get into your own bad habits, and no one knows. You just, one at the conference, when one of the examples was someone that was, for like 10 years, he drank a half gallon of vodka a day, and he's like, no one knew.
Yeah,
like no one. Like, how do you hide that? Like, you can do that if like you're working remotely, 3 days out of the week, and then like you go to the office. Don't say hi to your neighbors. They only see if you're like bringing your trash out or whatever, and you kind of wave, or you're mowing or whatever. Like, you can sneak off and hide things more than would be the case normally historically.
Yeah.
And then you add that to like the data of how many people do you have in your life? How many other guys do you have that are trustworthy and you have a close relationship? Like 0, 1, like, okay, like this is a rare historical issue.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that just ties it back to the fraternity thing. Mm-hmm. You have brothers that are asking questions, and you feel you don't want to lie to them. You shouldn't be. You're trying to be a good Christian man. You shouldn't be lying to the people that care about you. So you have that kind of, a little bit of the guilt or the law that presses on you. Don't lie about this. Be honest about whatever that struggle is. Or if you, especially the struggle, but especially if you didn't do the disciplines as you thought you would, or whatever it is. So it's nice. The accountability is something that has been lacking, I think, for a long time in the Western culture. So. Yeah.
So let's spend a little bit of time, because we do want to kind of highlight what's coming up for the Easter season, which is, one of the things that, we kind of sprinted to get things together and put up, in November to prepare for Lent, because Lent is, that's going to be kind of the backbone of things. It's not necessarily the most important, but it's certainly one with memento, remembrance. What kind of things have we forgotten? I think Lent, and the more we've studied this, like, it's so apparent how much we've lost kind of the understanding of Lent. Mm-hmm. One of the things is we have the kind of traditional Lutheran collects in Lent that are built in, and that's been one of the more eye-opening things for me, where it's like, you listen to these collects, and these are not collects written for like memento or anything.
Right.
Like, these are ancient collects used in the Lutheran Church, put together by the Lutheran Missal Project. We've forgotten. And like, what are most of those collects? And these are daily collects that would be used in prayer services at the church, mm-hmm. Whether Sunday or if they had like a daily matins or something like that. And what are the collects talking about? Like, all the time, like, may you use this mortification of the flesh. Like, may you bless our fast so that it would also help us resist sin. Like, this is like throughout all of Lent, this is heavily the focus. And Lent for me is like, it's like, I don't know, like Easter's coming up, like historically, like I'm a teenager, or, in my 20s, or, even early in my ministry. It's like, Easter's coming up. Maybe I'll give up chocolate, kind of, the sermon focuses are going to be a little bit more, but it's not this holistic that carries into the 365. So anyway, we launched for that. That was a big thing, but that's not 365. Right. And that's, I think most people understand that by now, but the point isn't, these are, food fasting 365 days a year, heavy discipline all the time. The point is that we've got all of these different seasons, and we lean into them in different ways. So we've leaned into, and we're currently leaning into Lent, mm-hmm. but around the corner is Easter, and that's going to be a big focus on feasting.
Yeah.
Right. So that's going to be a completely different shift, and Pastor, even Ian Kinney talks about it, he's like, the typography is more mountainous. It's like you're like way up here and way down here. It's the paradox that Chesterton talks about that's so beautiful. It's not just the flat plains where, a Wednesday in Lent and a Wednesday in Trinity Tide and a Wednesday in Advent and Easter and Christmas season all look the same. It's like, no, they look way different. In the same way that's naturally speaking, like a Wednesday in the summer, like I'm out mowing the lawn and playing with the kids. A Wednesday in the winter, like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm stuck inside. It's terrible. So in the Easter season, it's going to be a focus on feasting. It's also going to be a focus on hospitality.
Yeah.
And vocation is going to start to play a bigger role. So we lean into that a little bit in Lent, but kind of the idea is the main focus in Lent. I mean, almsgiving is obviously a very vocational, externally focused thing, but a lot of it is that this is the time where you're just kind of working through the weeds that have entangled you internally, right? So that you can move into these other seasons, and then you can feast and show hospitality because Christ has worked through some of these weeds, and whatnot to prepare you for that. So there's going to be a big focus on how do we feast and a recovery of that, which we'll speak about here in a second. And then also, who do we feast for, right? Yeah. So very much an outwardly oriented type focus with some different disciplines, if you want to call them that, habit formation to kind of bring this back in a healthy communal based way. So I don't know if any macro thoughts on it.
Well, yeah, I mean, just from the Lenten disciplines and the intensity therein, removing those weeds, allowing the Lord to kind of uproot whatever those weeds are for good seeds to be planted. And then now the time is, especially moving into kind of Pentecost, then into the summer seasons, the green season or the non-festive season, whatever you call it at, whatever particular congregation you're at, to let then those seeds that have been planted from the weeds being removed to then grow. And that's kind of the transition into Easter, is celebrating the victory that we have in Christ and the resurrection that is our hope, and the peace that surpasses understanding. But then also focusing, as you said, on those vocations. And then, all right, now I have space where the Lord has hopefully planted some good seed there, and asking him to use this time of feasting and focus on vocation to grow and bless not just me, but my family and others especially, right? I mean, I think that's kind of the transition, is you put in this hard work, the Lord has done hard work too on you with his word and in those disciplines, and now we get to kind of see maybe the fruits of that hard work. Hopefully, I think that's the intention. And yeah, it's good to make sure that people know it's 365 days. There are different seasons, there's different focuses. We're in the most intense season right now. Easter's pretty intense as well, but just in a different aspect.
Yeah.
So the hospitality is a big one, which is one I'm excited about, because it's not one that you kind of maybe is always in the forefront of your mind. Mm-hmm. It's something that you do when you have the opportunity, if you remember to do something about it. But this is kind of putting that into, be actively looking for ways to be hospitable to whomever. I mean, I think we have a kind of a list of things,
which we can go through. And I would say so. Really, Pastor Ian Kinney has been probably the main driver for kind of the nuance of this. And we talked before, he's very well researched on this kind of historically and whatnot, especially the Lenten season. But, he's kind of spread his wings here on this Easter season too. Yeah. It's pretty impressive.
Well, it is impressive. I'm very happy, very blessed to have a guy like that with the resource that he is.
Yeah. And he calls other people, he does a lot of, calling up great guys, Brian Wolfmueller and things like that, just to kind of pick their brains. And I mean, one of the big things for me is, and I was thinking of the Easter season kind of ahead when it was still kind of vague, and we're kind of thinking through like, okay, what's this going to look like? It seemed simple, and then kind of as we've looked into it, and especially as, Ian's been kind of putting this together, it's like, it was eye-opening in that, nope, there's surprises here for the Easter season in a really good way, like, things that you don't think about. So, one of the kind of the macro thesis is going to be we've forgotten how to fast, but believe it or not, we've forgotten how to feast.
Yeah.
In other words, he's like, well, that might sound kind of weird because we're surrounded by a wasteland of food. You can feast, go to Dollar General and get Little Debbie's, right? Like all these, like
hit the Arby's
notion.
up,
we've got so much things. We always know how to feast.
Yeah.
But that's not even necessarily feasting. That's really just kind of mundane gluttony.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a big differentiation that we're hopeful to make distinct and clear too in the Easter season, is this feasting isn't just straight up gluttony.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's cool. He's got a little Tolkien. This is a document that's going to go out here shortly on the Memento website, but he's got a cool quote at the beginning. It's from Tolkien, and it's, if more of us valued food and cheer and song above hoarded gold, it would be a merrier world. Mm-hmm. And that's, I'm pretty sure a reference to the hobbits, and just kind of their they're simple, feasting, joy,
Yeah.
earthy in the ground and whatnot. So anyway, I'm just going to jump forward to the actual disciplines themselves, and we can get back a little bit to the why. So there's kind of it's going to be structured a little bit different in that there's a baseline and then there's a list of additional ones to choose. And, we have always a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And the idea is tier 1, take on something like 3. Tier 2, take on something like 6-ish, maybe 9-ish. And then tier 3, something like 9 to 12 out of the 12 that are there. So we're still kind of breaking that up. So what's the baseline? Well, the baseline is these habits that we've built. What are the key ones that we've done? Cold showers are great for those that do the tier 2, tier 3. That's not the core of what Memento is. That's something that just kind of helps with our softness and our addiction to comfortability. What's the core? It's the daily scripture reading, which for Lent was heavy. I mean, we're getting close here to being finished with reading all of the Psalms and the New Testament in 63 days. That's the the quickest I've ever read.
It's a lot. I mean, I'm still getting caught up a little bit myself because it does. Even it just, life hits you sometimes, and you can fall behind real quickly. I've talked to a few guys who have been like, yeah, I've fallen pretty far behind. And my encouragement was, well, all right, jump back in and just continue to work through those as time goes on. But yeah, it is a lot, and it's a good a lot.
It'll be less. So once we get the rest of it, we're gonna be following a lectionary approach where I haven't looked specific. I mean, you have a New Testament reading, an Old Testament reading, maybe a psalm in there or something.
You want to be feasting on God's word.
Yeah, you want to be feasting on God's word. So that's going to be an anchor. We'll continue to have those plans put out, and we'll have the prayer, the matins and the vespers with some, the collects and maybe a couple of different prayers that we'll bring in at different times to kind of add to it. And then, fasting is not a focus here, right? So that's the primary goal. We're not moving it. That's not the goal. That's not what we're putting forth. And then the idea is that you want to plan feasting meals, right? And what's a feasting meal?
Intentionality.
Yeah. Which it's kind of, we call it a discipline. And the idea is a feasting meal doesn't just mean like I'm starving after lunch, so I'm going to go pick up my favorite pizza and go home and pull out the paper plates, and me and the kids are going to chomp down, which we do. Like we do that. But that's, a feast is something you plan and you say, Sunday we're going to have a nice meal. We're all going to sit here. Maybe we're going to light some candles. Maybe we're going to invite a friend over or a family over and talk about it. It's going to be a celebration. We're going to celebrate. Right. So different ways to do that. The idea is to make that a focus in Easter. You're not going to do that every day. You might not even do it every week. Everyone's going to be a little bit different. But the idea is that, for everyone, whenever you do your feast or your feasts, plural, begin and end with scripture, a prayer, a hymn, and a toast to Christ. Yeah. Right. To bring that back, it doesn't have to be a long scripture, 2 chapters, just something with your family, pray, maybe sing a hymn, and then give a toast to Christ, which is just kind of a cool, I don't know, it's that festivity.
Well, it's that celebration.
Joviality.
Yeah. I mean, it's that victory, that victory feast, the Easter season, so just, it's always tying back into that, which is, I think, easy to fall away from, unfortunately, because you get your big Easter celebration on like Holy Saturday or Easter Sunday, and you have your big feast at church before or after, or whatever you do in your congregation. And then maybe Easter Monday, you have something else. And then by the end of the week, it's kind of like, Easter was like a week ago. It's already over with, and it's almost, even in the church, if you come to church on Sundays, you're still kind of talking about it. You're following the story more from the gospel readings and the book of Acts. But in your everyday life, though, I think it's pretty easy for it to fall away. You lose that intentionality of, oh no, I'm still celebrating Easter, which is a wonderful thing. It's the highest, I think, feast day that we have in the Christian church. It's definitely the pinnacle. Or it's certainly the second mountaintop. You got kind of Christmas and Easter as like the two, big feast festival days.
And that's an important point, which has been a calibration shift for me. And it's beautiful if you can move in this way. Christmas is, maybe even a little bit easier, but the point is we have seasons, not days. I mean, we do have days, Easter is a day on the calendar, but the point is it's a season. And that shift is massive. And that the point is, if I just have one day, it's like a birthday or something. Like for people that lean into birthdays, I don't for myself, but if you do, it's like this one day has to be what? Like all your favorite things. Like I'm going to go and I'm going to do this because I like to do that and that. And and you have to soak it all up, and 24 hours goes so quickly, and then it's done. And same thing, like if you put all the pressure on like we want Easter to be amazing, so we're going to have like one day and it's all going to be packed into there. Then it's just stressful on everybody because everything has to go right. If not, everyone's stressed and angry because like this one day where you had a chance. It's like, no, you got 40 days. Like spread this out. You like enjoy it, Second Sunday in Easter, you can do something special, whatever. Same with the 12 days of Christmas, Christmas Day is like chaos when you have like church and presents and kids stuff and you're trying to, it's like you got 12 days, you can spread those presents out over 12
you're
days.
Right. I mean,
there's a song about that, right?
There's a lot of stress around Christmas Eve and Christmas for just families and stuff and people that I talk to because they're all trying to fit all that into those 2 days. And it's like, well, no, we have time afterwards. I think it's a good curb maybe or guide to keep us on the rails too from falling off into just gluttony too. Because you have that intentionality. No, you don't have to fit it all in on this one day. We have a season to celebrate. We have these, we call them rhythms, but we have these guidelines that help keep us with intentionality, and that's something that it's the more I think about it, the more I'm just thankful for the church year. It's something that I was aware of growing up in the Lutheran church, but as a kid, you don't really think about it outside of those kind of big days, Christmas Eve, Christmas, and Easter, and maybe some other the big holidays, Pentecost and stuff like that. But as I got older and seeing the seasons, I've grown a lot more appreciative of them. I can revel in this a little bit more. I can really enjoy, this season or stay focused, not just for Ash Wednesday, but for these 40, 45 days or 65 or whatever it is that we have.
63 for Lent. Yeah.
63. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I'm very much looking forward to Easter because I've done some Lent. This is my most intense Lent, 2026, but over the last 5 years or so, I've done more and more Lent things, but I don't think I've ever leaned into like Easter, as a season.
Yeah.
So this is cool. So let me go through some of these other, these are kind of the other additional things that we kind of put forward, choose ones that you think, but these, I really like these. So first one is take 1 to 3 vacation days off work, during the season of Easter. And here's the thing, here's what people normally do for vacation days, right? You take it off and you're like, we got a lot of yard work, so I'm going to take a day off and we're just going to work, right?
Yeah.
And the point is, no, take some days off and just rest or be with your family or plan things with your friends. Or, if you're a single guy and you like to go hike, like enjoy the spring and just take like 2 days and just go do the things that you enjoy. Like revel in God's blessings for you. Like cultivate a heart of thanksgiving by leaning into that.
Yeah.
Because we don't normally, especially like for us with young kids, it's like,
when we
Saturday
we
comes
feel
along
guilty.
and we're like, we got to clean and then we got to kids. And it's just like,
no,
just take a day and just, play baseball, Lincoln kind of a thing,
Yeah. And enjoy it. Because I think that stems from maybe the workaholic kind of aspect of, the American dream or whatever. Like if you take too much time or you enjoy yourself too much, there's always work you could be doing. What is it? Oh man, I'm drawing a blank on it now. We just talked about it in one of the devotions. Laziness.
Oh, sloth.
Yeah. Thank you. Of like being slothful in the opposite way, but this is like, no, take the time and be present with the people that are in your life, and enjoy the rest, enjoy, that time to just bask in just the simple and ordinary blessings that we probably so often take for granted. I know that I can be guilty of that at times, of just not being aware, just taking for granted the simple, ordinary blessings that I just, brush off as ordinary. But when I stop to think about them, I'm very, very fortunate, very blessed, very thankful that the Lord has, given me or allowed these things to happen in my life. And that's, I think, very important as well, to just work on that attitude of gratitude. I know it's a cheesy phrase and I hate when people say it, but I just said it. There's a true, there's a little bit of aspect, true aspect there, that we don't always do. And this is that intentionality then again for that. So.
Yeah. And I guess for some of the context on sloth, because I think that's one of the most eye-opening of the 7 deadly sins, maybe avarice too, but probably sloth, in that sloth, historically speaking, right from the Desert Fathers when it was kind of first articulated, as kind of ways demonic forces attack you and then, categorized in different ways. But up until really the Enlightenment, and especially Ford was actually someone that really shifted it.
Yeah.
Sloth was always understood not as just laziness or sluggardliness, as it's talked about in the Proverbs, but it's actually spoken of as just having things distract you from the important thing.
Yeah.
So good things getting in the way of the ultimate things. So, the example is, you're doing your prayers in the afternoon, or a more modern day example might be you're in church on Sunday. You can miss church because you're falling asleep or you slept in the morning. That's sluggardliness. That's part of sloth. But the other one is you're sitting at church and you're thinking about, I've got to go answer that email, or, I can't wait to go and like go do my yard work. I hope this hurries up. And it's like, whoa, like what's going on? Like you're at the divine service and you're preoccupied with work you have to do.
You're not in the moment.
Yeah. It's like your work's that important. That's actually sloth. Like your busyness gets in the way of your true vocations of receiving from God and pouring out to your neighbors. And so sloth is a big issue. And it's funny, when Henry Ford comes around, he recategorizes sloth only to mean laziness.
Yeah.
And America has obviously inherited that, where, there's that one commercial, it's a car commercial, right? And it's some luxury car, I forget which one. It was a Cadillac. And, the guy's got a nice house or whatever. And it's like this speech, as he's going about putting on a suit and like, eventually going to hop in this nice luxurious car. And so on American exceptionalism, and it's like, how about other countries? They take 2 days off work, but we don't do that. We only take 1 day off work, and we put in the extra hours in the evening and and you deserve this nice thing. And it's like, man, you just destroyed sloth and avarice all in one commercial. And when I watched it, I was pumped up, and I was like, then after the fact, I'm like,
going, but
shoot, like, nope, that's actually not all that healthy. This work. So yeah, first one, take 1 to 3 vacation days off work. And remember, you pick which ones that you want to tackle. We good about it? Yeah. Okay. 2, invite your next door neighbor for an Easter feast, right? So on one of these times that you have an Easter feast, you work ahead, you plan a meal, you prep it maybe the day before, whatever, and now it's not just you or just your family. Invite someone over from your neighborhood, invite someone over from the cul-de-sac, here's an opportunity to serve your neighbor, which is something that's very much talked in the Bible. So invite them in for a feast, and then what do? You pray, you can use your wisdom on, are you going to sing a hymn? Are you going to do a toast? I think those are good things. At the same point, use your wisdom. So you don't have to necessarily startle somebody, but but still lean into it. Next one, invite your pastor and his family over for an Easter feast. And that's a good one. Have a relationship with your pastor. Maybe you've never had a meal with him or with his family. Invite him over for an Easter feast.
And I'm sure it's much different than like a meal at church too. Which
100%.
Which
in
is
the
like,
home is so much different. Yeah.
It's a different way to get to know the guy a bit. Which can be, which can have a lot of benefits. You just a different, especially if they're at if the pastor's at your house, it's just kind of nice. Because sometimes, especially if you're like a family of, with kids and stuff, the pastor may or may not always be visiting you, depending on, because more often than not, they're probably visiting the shut-ins and the homebound, and, those who are sick, they might not always get around to just have a regular visit with the folks that they see kind of every Sunday. So it's a different aspect. It's a different viewpoint. You get to build that relationship in a different way, which is nice.
Mm-hmm. Next one, it's right along the same line. Invite 2 families from your church for an Easter feast at the same time.
Yeah.
Right. So now you're moving into like a little bit of a festival, right? Yeah. And maybe this fits better. I'm thinking from our perspective in Minnesota, this probably fits better towards the end of the Easter season, right? Yeah. Where it's like, okay, now it's nice out, so maybe we can grill out, we can eat out, the kids can run around the yard, but it's that communal aspect. We miss that. That's something that's historically normal. It's culturally normal outside of our setting, but for a lot of us, we might go a whole year, and other than like our 1 or 2 really close friends that we just get together with, like
it's similar to the fraternity. It's similar to the fraternity aspect of, you see these guys every Sunday, unless now that the fraternities have been made, you have a different relationship with them. You might have families the same way, like, oh, I see him at church, we're friendly, we say hi, we talk at church, we have coffee or whatever. But we never really hung out with them before, and that really changes the dynamic. It makes you think a little outside of your own circle as well. So it can be probably a little bit uncomfortable at first, because, when you first kind of interact with somebody in that aspect, it's a different thing than just kind of the niceties out in public. It's just a little bit more personal, which is a good thing. And it's a good uncomfortability. It's stretching in a good way, these are great things that I'm thinking myself like, oh man, that's some work though. You got to put in to do that. It's a commitment.
That's what a discipline.
Yeah, it is. These are disciplines. They're just a different aspect. They're, so I think these are great. And that's why I'm excited to lock in on these and focus in on them, because it's going to challenge me, because I can be one that just, you go do your church thing, you talk with your folks, you visit your folks, you call them, you talk with them, but then you're kind of done, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you need that, just some personal time, but other times you could probably, you know, personally speaking, I could be a lot more hospitable,
Yeah,
you know, and just kind of build those relationships in a different way, you know, and that's kind of nice because who knows what kind of conversations arise, what other opportunities arise just from getting to know somebody in a different light, you know, outside of just the confines of the church building, you know.
I mean, just think about the ripple effect of this. Well, let me say the next one.
Yeah.
Feast with someone at the nursing home.
Right.
Twice. Twice. So, you know, think about that of, we've got, you know, every church has people that are in nursing homes or shut-ins, you know? So how do you do this? Well, probably like talk to your pastor and be like, okay, who in our church is, you know, at the nursing home? Or it doesn't have to be someone that's in your church, but that's a really nice, easy starting point if you don't know people there. And it's like, you can. I mean, pastors will do it. I mean, you know, I'll go visit someone in the nursing home and sometimes it's lunch and like, oh, they're down having lunch, you know, and I'll go down and sit with them and be like, Pastor, you know, go grab some food or whatever. And, you know, sometimes I've already eaten, sometimes I haven't, right? So this is not difficult to do.
Yeah. You don't have to be a pastor to visit those folks.
No, 100%. So, I mean, there's people that just eat alone all the time and you will make their month if you go and have a meal with them, you know? And just imagine I'm thinking about, you know, a church that has like 6-7 guys doing Memento, you know? And so let's start with the congregation. So let's say you got 6-7 guys that are doing Memento in a congregation. That'd be kind of a normal number. You know, we've got churches that are doing 30-35 guys.
Yeah.
So now imagine you got all these guys like leaning into hospitality and how their friends have, like, you know, those families are connected with their pastor, they're connected with other people in their church and within the community. And let's imagine you got like 6 people that are like, Pastor, you know, who's our shut-ins? Well, we've got 10, you know, and all of a sudden in the season of Easter, you know, it's being highlighted to them. Like, this is an important season of feasting and hospitality. And now you've got guys like coming in, they might have like 3-4 meals with different families from their church that they don't even know. And it's like coming in, they're like, we want to sit and I want to eat with you. Maybe it's just the guy coming in and just having a one-on-one, or maybe he brings his kids or something like that. Like, that's beautiful.
It is.
And if we have, you know, we're not far from 1,000 churches in, you know, throughout the Lutheran Church.
Yeah.
So now you've got thousands of churches, or not thousands, but hundreds and hundreds, close to 1,000 churches where now all of a sudden shut-ins are like being visited much more.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, this could be really beautiful.
And you never know. I mean, sometimes, you know, I just talked with a gentleman who's, I think, going to join up with St. James because he was looking for a church home. And he came from, you know, a non-Lutheran background. Now he is an LCMS Lutheran. And, but he has experience going and visiting, you know, shut-ins and those who are in the hospital and stuff as kind of a deacon at a previous congregation. And he's like, I really loved it. Like, I really find a purpose therein, you know, and you never know what that leads to. It could be the pastoral ministry, but it could just be you got another great, you know, lay person that has a heart for visiting folks that often are neglected or forgotten about, you know, not just, you know, from families, but just from society sometimes. And then you have somebody that, you know, they do this, what they might think is uncomfortable at first, and they find out, oh man, I really love this, you know. And then you just have, there's a bunch of beauty and growth that can come from that, you know. So that's a really exciting thing.
And if you have kids, it's wonderful for your kids. I just did this on Saturday, so 3 days ago. You know, I went for a shut-in visit. I mean, this was someone that's they've had surgery, so, you know, they're for about a month or so, they're not going to make it into church because they can't leave their home. And I've done this once before with this couple when the wife was, you know, had surgery in a different way. And, you know, I brought my kids, you know, so we sit there and, you know, we do communion. My kids, you know, are obviously watching, but my 4-year-old and my 6-year-old are there and they're kind of talking with some other adults, and, you know, that's very formative for them. And that's really valuable. I mean, I love taking them to hospital visits too. Just like letting them see this side of thing of like people getting sick and having conversations. What does that mean? You know, or taking my kids to funeral. Like, these are wonderful blessings for your household. And it's just leaning into the community that we've lost. All right. Some of the other ones. This one is definitely an Ian Kinney one, but I'm going to try it. So, roast a whole animal.
I mean, it sounds good.
I've never roasted a whole animal.
Yeah, me either.
I don't know. Maybe grab a squirrel.
Well, we got big old rats in Baltimore, so
got some big old rats.
Yeah, we can.
There will be in the document some advice on that. There's some in here. I'm not going to go ahead and read it, but
or just
Kenny's got some scripture.
Get a big old piece of meat and smoke it or something.
Big old, yeah. But I mean, that's cool. The point
is intentionality behind that. You know, to get a whole You know, I mean, he got a whole hog roast.
He's got a whole hog roast.
Yeah.
Magdalene, I think is her name. Or something like that. The hog that he's roasted for Easter. Oh, man. But yeah, there is something to it. Like once again, it's the whole remembrance idea is what we think is normal. It's not necessarily normal. It's not normal that I can just go to the grocery store and just be like, you know what, I want a T-bone, or you know what, I'll have a filet or whatever. And I'm going to take this little piece home and then I'm going to cook it. Like, before there was some work and appreciation. You know, I'm not a hunter, but I've got a lot of friends that are hunters, Bennett hunts, you know, and they always say like, there's a beauty to the fact that you're participating in the process by which you get your meat. Yeah. You know, like when I go pick it up, like that's not how meat starts. It's not just like prepackaged in a nice little slice that I throw on the grill. Yeah. Right. There's a whole process there. And hunters will say that. It's like, you know, you hunt the animal, you go through the work, then you have to actually, you know, skin and, it's not carve. What's the right word about it? Harvest the animal. That sounds goofy. Bennett's thinking, I don't know. You hunters know. Prepare. Go through it, right? I mean, it's you appreciate the process, right? So, what else here? Be home for supper every night during the Easter season. You know, there's a good one. And obviously for someone, like if they've got a trip they've got to travel for, you know, build those kind of things in. But yeah, make that the goal of like, I'm going to be home with my family for dinner.
The intentionality there. Yeah. Just you're making it a focus. Like this is what's going to happen unless barring any emergency. You know, I know pastors are called away for, you know, end of life situations and whatnot and whatever else other jobs there are, you know.
So, what is it? Dress it.
There
you go. That sounds better than harvest.
What kind of hunter are you?
Yeah. Bennett's having an anxiety attack over there. Oh man. So yeah, be home for supper every night, you know, be present with the family, recover the fact that the meal's really important. I mean, we could geek out on Babbitt's Feast a little bit, but
it's been a while since I've seen it, but I remember that was like a big focal point at, what was it?
Art Just. Yeah. Dr. Art Just. He, and our, what was it? It was the Teologia, on the Lord's Supper.
Yeah.
On Holy Communion.
I think it was 3, whatever that was.
Yeah, we go into class one day and,
I don't think he explained it either. I think he just
didn't know it was
started.
Coming.
No, I think he just like showed the movie.
Also, we were watching a movie, but I mean, at seminary, you don't watch movies in class. This was really unique. And it's like this French movie, so it's in subtitles. Yeah, so it's probably made in like the 70s or something like that. Yeah. I don't know. It's pretty.
It was a curveball.
And I'm like, what in the world are we doing? I don't understand what's going on. The plot was, since I had no context, I was like,
because he didn't give us a whole like this. We're going to watch this for this reason. He just threw us in.
I was late like 5 minutes to that class too, so I walked in and like it was playing. Yeah, and I was like, what's going on? Like, what I miss? And yeah, so it was underwhelming until it wasn't. And now it's like very memorable. So Babbitt's Feast, I don't know how you spell Babbitt's, you know, you can look it up. But so the whole thing is the town's becoming fractured, right? Everyone's there's disunity. There's a lot of fighting going on. I think it's French. It could be Nordic as well. But, you know, so, and it's all connected with the church. So there's a bunch of disunity in the church, which is kind of an extension of the community. And then there's this lady, I think Babbitt, that ends up coming there for some reason. She kind of ends up, she needs work or something.
Yeah, she's a cousin, chef, I think, or something.
She's a chef.
Skilled in the kitchen.
Yeah. So she takes on kind of the role of like a servant, you know, and so she saves her money for this period of time. And then she uses that money, I think, to like throw this feast. And she's just going way over the top. And like everyone's kind of frustrated by it, if I remember.
I think so.
But she's just like so diligent on like, I need to get this. Like she's putting in order. Right. Like she's like from Paris. Like I need this, and it needs to be this type of cheese, and like and I need this cookware and all this stuff. So it's kind of it's obnoxious to everyone around. And then she serves and puts on this grand feast, and everyone kind of reluctantly comes, and you know, and then throughout the feast, it's like 10 courses or something, right? It's just, it's over the top, and you just watch, and all of a sudden, all these relationships that are fractured, you know, they start to come together, and all of a sudden they're laughing a little bit, you know, and they kind of jarring at each other a little bit, and then and then it's just, all of a sudden everyone is like unified. Yeah. And the point is, theologically speaking, it's a picture of the Lord's Supper, right? That this grandiose feast of Christ's body and blood that he gives sacrificially for us. What does that do? That brings all of these disjointed people with these different backgrounds and opinions and ways of life, you know, and whatnot. Some are hunters, some are, it's like, and they all come together. And now there's this unification that takes place. And the point is that, you know, Kenny highlights this, that, you know, that is not a symbol. That's the reality. But our personal feasting is a symbol of that. Right. So when we feast, when we, go about being with our family or inviting people in, like it is around the dinner table that this unification happens, because that is symbolic of the heavenly meal that we participate in.
Yeah. There's it's a weird segue. I don't want to take us off track too much, but I mentioned this book to you before. It's out of print. It was by CPH back in like 1954, somewhere in the 50s. The gentleman's name escapes me. I have it over in my bag. But the title of the book is, I think it's called Spiritual Power for Your Congregation. Mm-hmm. And it's written by this pastor whose name escapes me at the moment, out of Englewood, California, I believe. And in it, he talks about a lot of stuff. It's a really short read. It's really easily accessible to understand. Well, accessible to understand, not accessible to find anymore. I think Pops has been buying up as many copies as he can get his hands on because he loves it. That's how I got a copy of it. But in it, he goes through a lot of just different basics of the Lutheran faith. But in one of the chapters, he breaks down kind of the heart altar, the home altar, and then the church altar, and kind of where all three need to be there for the Christian life, and it starts with, your faith life, if you will. It doesn't start there, but like you have to have worship in your life outside of Sunday mornings in your everyday life that flows into your daily life, especially if as a father with your family, the home altar then, and being intentional with reading God's word, prayers, discussions about scripture or Christian topics or whatever it is. And then of course, then the church altar where you go and get fed by God's word and the sacrament and how they all work together. This is kind of that focus on the home altar aspect of just being intentional with your family just for meal times, but also what else does that include too? Just time with your family, intentionality with your family, taking those weeds that we hopefully the Lord, uprooted in Lent. Now we can see some of those fruits of the discipline of spending the intentionality time with your family. So that's what good, this one is. Yeah, like I said, I wish I remembered the author's name, and I'm sure we could probably.
I'm gonna have to talk to Pops and see if he'll send me a copy.
Yeah, I'll see. I don't know how many he has in his stockpile.
Yeah. No, that's good. All right, let's go through these last ones. Send someone a feast. Mm-hmm. And that's the idea of yeah. I mean, I can think of some people. Think of young families. Mm-hmm. Meals can be tough when you've got little kids running around or something like that. Send them a meal. When we had all of our kids at both churches that we've been at have done meal trains. Yeah, which was a godsend, right?
Yeah, that's great.
It was like I forget how long this one was, but it was I don't know, it might have been a month, even like 4 or 5 weeks. Wow. Where we had 3-4 meals coming in, so different people from the church dropping off meals. That is a wild blessing, right? When you're going through a day and it's, you got a little baby and other kids running around, it's when you're like, we don't have to cook dinner. We don't have to clean up dishes. We don't have to like scrub pots and pans. That's massive. So send someone else a feast. Pick someone to, I like this one. This one came actually out of some of the discussion that you were talking about earlier at our fraternity meeting, but pick someone to serve every day for those 40 days. Mm-hmm. Just being, again, purposeful, and if you're married, your wife is going to be an obvious pick here. It doesn't have to be a pick, but that's a good place to start. Maybe it's your mother, you could maybe do both, right? So the idea is, okay, how often do I call my mom? How often do I ask how she's doing? Yeah. So maybe for the Easter, 40 days, right? Yeah.
Again, those are probably things you should be doing already, but if you aren't, it's a good time to be intentional with it.
Put them on the app.
You
click it. I called my mom.
Yeah, you're growing into these things that you forgot, right? I mean, even the good things, right? Mm-hmm. Not so much the hard things like Lent was about, but these are the good things that probably are pretty easy to give your mom a call. Yeah,
wash the dishes for your wife, whatever means something to your wife. Yeah, do that for 40 days and just watch what happens to your relationship.
Yeah, with no no expectations. I just want to do this because I just want to serve. Yeah, I just want to be hospitable.
Mm-hmm. So pick one person, maybe two. I mean, use some wisdom there, but yeah, it's that intentionality, right? I can't think of a time that I've set aside 40 days to consciously serve my wife.
Yeah, it usually comes in waves.
Comes in waves, or you kind of just say, well, I just naturally do that, and then you think about it and say, well, maybe I don't. There's some things that I might do that might be serving, but do I actually wake up and plan out and be today I'm going to make sure that I do this, or I'm going to make sure I send her a nice text or something like that, Last 3 here, snack on purpose.
Snack like you mean it.
Snack like you mean it. This one's kind of cool. So we haven't been snacking
Mm-hmm.
in Lent. You're allowed to snack at Easter. That's going to be kind of cool. But what does that mean? Well, I mean, I guess it means you can go buy more Doritos and just like hammer through a bag of Doritos.
You could,
You could.
guess. Yeah.
Like, and you can as a Christian, right?
Yeah,
we're not
true.
saying you
Yeah,
can't
you have
do
your
that
Christian
as a Christian.
freedom.
But it might be kind of cool to snack on purpose.
Yeah.
You might notice some benefits. What does that mean? Well, like, I don't know, go to a cheese shop, and try some nice cheeses and pick up some nice crackers and be like, all right, so for my snack, I'm not just going to grab a bag of fake food.
Right.
I'm going to just cut some nice cheese and I'm going to appreciate it. Right.
Yeah.
It's that, rather than me kind of like scrolling through social media and aimlessly just like tossing non-food into my mouth, to scratch an itch, like appreciate a nice piece of cheese. Or I don't know, Bennett, what would be some like nice snacks that you would choose? Charcuterie platter.
Like 5-6 slices of Colby Jack cheese, a few slices of salami, and apple.
Ooh, some salami, nice apple.
Oh, some good honey too in there.
Yeah,
You got
honey. Cottage cheese.
That's a hot thing right now. The
Yeah.
cottage cheese. Yeah.
Kids are hungry now. That's what the kids are doing it.
Yeah.
I mean,
no,
yeah,
and that's true. Like
think
just
about
some nice slices of like, I know that Ian's be going for that smoked Gouda and prosciutto.
Yeah.
But it's those nice like slices of meat that you see. We got a Wegmans over by us, so when we're feeling fancy,
Yeah.
we'll go to Wegmans and get the nice cheese sometimes. Which reminds me, I'm missing out on. We bought these cheese wheels from Wegmans. They're like Irish, made with like a Guinness or made with like an Irish whiskey or something with the cheese. Those are sitting in my house. By the time I get back, I'm sure my wife will have
Finished
housed them. Yeah, because she was excited to get into them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, there's a good cheese store in, it's either Minneapolis or St. Paul, not too far from where we were. Man, they've got beautiful cheese. When I was on Carnivore, we were coming back from the Children's Museum and we stopped there because I was like shaking. I was so hungry. And so we stopped by and we got some of these cheeses and it was like just heaven. There were some soft cheeses. I mean, it's another ball game. Like when you're not talking about I like the Kerrygold cheddar. Like that's fine.
Yeah.
And you don't have to like go above and beyond, right? But try some other cheeses. Like cheese,
It's
I don't know
nice,
why we're
fun.
only talking about cheese. Those Minnesotans, and yeah, I don't know what other hummus.
Yeah, I mean, just
good.
like
Carrots.
like you said,
it's not a
instead of-
list. There's not a rule of like
No,
here's what it
but
is.
like
But
just
think
be
about
intentional with it
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
Like if you're gonna snack, do it with purpose. Have something good. Have it be. What are you celebrating? Well, the resurrection of our Lord. Or is Kraft Singles good enough for that? Right.
Bennett says no.
Bennett says no. I guess it could be, but I mean, why not? Do something, try something new too. Expand your horizons just from kind of like a simple human point of view. Just try something new too. You might find something delicious that you didn't know you loved before.
Yeah.
I've been into figs lately. That's not really like I guess it is kind of a kind of a fancy snack. But we have these like Turkish figs that are sun dried or whatever, and so I'm looking forward to getting into those more as Easter comes up because I've kind of like put them in like meals, so I'm not snacking, but they're good. Yeah. But yeah, try something like that out. Put that on your charcuterie board, and
Ooh, some olives.
some olives. Yeah, big olive guy.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
Jalapenos.
you're
pickled
making me
jalapenos.
hungry now. We gotta move on to the next one. 'Cause-
I think the overarching point is like just real food. And again, it's not as a law. We're not saying like here to be a Christian, don't eat Doritos. That's not the point. The point is, some intentionality. If you decide to choose this one as the one you want to pop in, like maybe eat something that God crafted and versus a scientist crafted. All right. Last two, I'm going to save 11 for last. Next one, no eating alone. Right. So, which is cool. There was a book, my previous senior pastor, Pastor George Ruish, that was like one of his favorite books. And I never read it, but he would talk about it. And it was like, never eat alone. And so he would, and I suffered from sloth. So shame on me, but he'd be like, hey, like come have lunch with me. I'd be like, I'm working.
Yeah, I got some emails I could.
I have important things to do. It's like, no, you don't. Go eat with George.
Yeah.
And I would, not every day, but he would try to do that. He would eat it. He wouldn't eat in his office. He would eat in the conference room, and Diane was over there, so sometimes she would join. Charlene would be there. So he really tried to cultivate that, and good for him. But that's Yeah. And I mean, even in here, it's like, okay, that might be more easy for some than others.
I think, to be honest, that's probably going to be a hard one for me, because I'm so used to like, not necessarily
we don't have an office setting.
I don't. Well, no, it's a unique situation. Baltimore ministry is a unique situation, but I got into the habit before the Lenten season of like eating lunch because I'm working from home. I just go sit at the kitchen table, get my laptop out, put YouTube on by myself. Because either my wife's working or whatever the case may be, and I just, I'm not eating alone. I have this screen entertaining me, so that could be a good one, a beneficial one, I think, outside of just the hospitality aspect of it, but just kind of just breaking you out of the monotony of staring at a screen, eating alone. Just kind of what benefit is that when you could be building relationships and bridges with folks that you interact with every day, but now you have a different aspect to interact with them. It's not a work setting. Even if you're at work, that kind of, those meals kind of break down some barriers if you think about it.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. You can't feast alone.
Right.
Is the point. I think he even tells a story in here, right? Where it's like, we don't have to go through the whole story, but
they'll see.
And there's more info in the docs and stuff. Okay. Last one. This one's kind of cool. He calls it a gridlock feast. And we're actually going to try this. I was going to try it on Easter Day, but I think we're going to punt for a couple weeks because we need better weather if we're going to host a lot of people.
Yeah, and it's looking how it is right now.
No guarantees of that here. So, but anyway, what's that? It's you can go for all of this, or you can go for parts of it. But he says, okay, this one's going to take some planning, but find a way to close down your block, street, cul-de-sac, church parking lot for a potluck feast.
Yeah.
So we're going to try something like this. I'm going to talk to the city and see if I can get. I don't know how that works. If I need permission to
probably
have the cul-de-sac. Put tables out in the cul-de-sac, invite everyone from the cul-de-sac and like the houses nearby and say, hey, you're welcome to come. Kind of open invite to a lot of the church to say, you come. And I mean, we're working on, we've got a friend, Matt Colander's got a company that, pork and a lot of wholesale selling of local sourced, and he does all the cooking and stuff. He's fantastic. And so, that's Bennett's cousin. Married in. And so he's going to like provide, the meat, at discount, which is awesome. And we're just going to have that and then have like wine and, beer and just like make it a big festivity and just be like, lady that lives alone, like you come, like friends come, like neighbors come, and just like open it up and make it a big Easter feast.
Yeah. No, that's a great idea.
I think it's cool.
There's a buddy, he's a neighbor of mine back when I used to live down in the city in Baltimore. He's moved out to the suburbs as well in the recent years, but for like 10 years, and I kind of was on the tail end of that. He's a firefighter out there, and so he would have a lot of connections. So he would like get the permits to like shut down one of the blocks, and the blocks in Baltimore are a lot different with like the row homes. They call them townhomes, but the old row homes there. And he would just throw a big Halloween party. I mean, it would be hundreds of people there, and he would have like retired police officers or off-duty police officers there to kind of just make sure that things aren't getting out of hand. It was always pretty fun, but the whole point was just to kind of cut loose and things like that. Whereas this is, the intentionality there is a little different. So it's certainly a feasible thing. It does take a little bit of planning, but how cool would that be though, to have that either in your neighborhood or outside of the neighborhood of the congregation, wherever you're at, to do something like that. And I'm sure there's folks at any congregation that are plugged into the local community, and it's a community building thing in some regard as well. Like the community gets to see the church celebrating with no strings attached, quote unquote, if you will. You know what I mean? Like it's just, hey, come and feast. We're celebrating the resurrection of Christ. You're invited to share in that joy that we have, so that's kind of that's a unique and I think a really beneficial one. I
mean, we talked with Dave Peterson about that a little bit, some adjacent things, but it's, I mean, honestly, if a church is trying to think of a way to, reach out to the community, like this is probably one of your better ways. This is going to work better probably than some kind of program that you run. Sure. It's just, we're having a feast. Yeah. And now the catch is like, you need to make it a feast. Like you should probably have beer there. I think like you should probably have wine there, tough to find a feast in the Bible where, wine's not present. Yeah. Right. So is that a rule? No, but like make it just feel like a feast. Like a feast. Pastor Duncan often says, like, don't you dare let the pagans feast better than you do. Like you actually have reasons to feast. Right. Yeah. So don't let them feast better. Yeah. And they might feast sinfully, so that's not the point. Mm-hmm. But don't make it a whitewashed feast. Right. Don't make it, just make it good food, lean into it. Yeah. And that's the point. And it doesn't mean you have to like break the bank to do it necessarily. There's a lot of different ways you can do that, obviously, but yeah, feast.
Yeah.
Memento feast.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Remember how to feast.
I'm excited to get into that because I think, like you said, we started off it's an aspect that we just forgot or don't know how to do or have been doing it poorly or wrong even maybe at times. And this is kind of just, how do we do it well? How do we do it to God's glory? Which is, I don't know, sometimes maybe not the thought at times when you're feasting, but so it's good to have that perspective shift, So yeah, it's gonna be a good next season.
Yeah, feast with a purpose.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a quick break. All right, and Bennett says we are back. So let's go ahead and pivot here. I just want to pick your brain a little bit about what you've seen in you're in Baltimore, so inner city, unique setting, certainly different than where we're at here. So what's that been like doing ministry in kind of a struggling city, at that?
Yeah, it has its ups and downs with, the HBO show, The Wire. It's fictional,
Sort of.
but not really. I think it was written by a retired detective and a retired writer for the Baltimore Sun from back in the 90s or something. And they tag teamed to write and produce the show. So they just kind of wrote off of experiences, but changed names and different things. Mm-hmm. So there's, it's a pretty graphic and gruesome show and things like that. So it's not always for everybody to stomach. But if you do happen to watch it, it is pretty accurate when it comes to a lot of the just struggles and issues that are going on back then in the late 90s, early 2000s, and then even to today. So it's a gritty city, but it's got its charm. So they do call it Charm City. That's its nickname.
Yeah.
Which does probably keep people around, because if it didn't have that charm, it's not particularly safe everywhere, like any big city or things like that. But the ministry out there is, I think, is it Wilhelm Lee? Wilhelm Lee? I still can't pronounce the name. So don't anybody put that in the devotions for me to to pronounce. I'll have to Google it. But they had that building at Fort Wayne Seminary. But I think he came in through Baltimore, if I'm not mistaken, and same with Winnikin as well. So we have, our Circuit 3 is the circuit that's out in Baltimore. There's 15 churches out in that circuit, and I happen to be the circuit visitor for the next couple of years there. Mm-hmm. And we also have a project called the Winnikin Project as well, which has kind of helped step up and fill some gaps with just ministry that needs to happen with kind of the failing buildings, really more than anything, but then some of the church attendance struggles as well, because we have a couple churches that are, one that's in Carrollton Ridge in West Baltimore, which is, it's a food desert. It's just almost a desert. There's just, bombed out arson buildings everywhere. And then you have this church, and there's a core group of people that are there, but they need help because they can't support the church themselves. So the Winnikin Project kind of got started, I think, 2014 or so, to kind of help fill those gaps where maybe the district didn't have funds to do it, and the other congregations that are in our circuit don't have the funds to help out another church, let alone sometimes themselves. So that's been a beautiful blessing that I've been able to be part of on the board for the Winnikin Project, just to see where's a need. Sometimes just a basic thing like your bell tower is about to fall in. We need to fix that.
Yeah.
This building's from 18 whatever. How can we make that happen? How can we find the grants or raise the funds to do that? So you have those two big, Lutheran guys coming through Baltimore. So there's a big Lutheran presence there, in the 1800s. So that Lutheran presence is all over the place in Baltimore, but because of the struggling economic situation sometimes with some of the parts of the city and a lot of the folks moving out to other areas, the churches that are there, they dwindled in size, and so did the funds then. So we just have a lot of buildings that need a lot of, structural help. Mm-hmm. Where do we find those funds to do? Because they're there in those areas where the gospel needs to be preached. And then you tag in kind of an issue that is probably across the country as well, and a lot of different circuits and districts where we have a lot of vacancies also, because we've had either guys who have retired or, more often than not, congregations that can't afford a full-time pastor. So of the 15 churches in Circuit 3 Baltimore, if I remember correctly, I think we have 5 that have full-time called pastors there.
10 vacancies and 5.
Yes.
Wow.
If like I said, if my memory serves me correct. So the last few weeks I've been, meeting with congregations and on the phone, and we just recently had a congregation kind of become vacant because this gentleman who was filling in, a lay leader who's been faithful for years, He's like 84. He had a mini stroke. And so now that's another congregation that is, what do we do? And so we kind of go through the list of the options, which I don't know if are known to everybody. I've walked my own congregation through this, just so that they know here's what happens if either I take a call or, something happens, or, we have a big financial struggle at some point. The solutions are you call a pastor. That's kind of like the ultimate. That's what you want, a congregation and a pastor to be together. If you can't call a pastor because you can't afford one, then can you multi-point parish or a dual-point parish with a pastor? Call a pastor to 2 different congregations and have him kind of serve them both and get them going on their feet. If that's not an option, then we move to multi-point, where maybe there's a few different churches the pastor works at with help from other pastors in the area. And then if that's not a viable option, then we have to merge congregations for, I hate to use the word viability, because it seems very like unchurchly and untheological, but there's situations where you have a few folks and the building is almost suffocating. Is it time for us to consider maybe merging congregations where we maybe sell that property and use those funds for some ministry opportunity to fund back into the circuit or the city in some way, and then we kind of bolster another congregation, and it's sort of a rejuvenation. And if that's not an option, then what does it look like to close and then replant? We have a situation out there where there was a church, First Towson in Towson, which is kind of a suburb of Baltimore, that had a similar struggle, and they decided we're going to close, but we're going to replant with the Lutheran high school that's out there. So now they're called New Thing, and they're in the Concordia Prep High School, and so they're a new congregation. Rebirth from that old one. So that's a unique situation that is a viable option, if you want to say that, so that you can continue ministry, but maybe in a different look, in a different way, that might be, you can always grow from there. And if that's not something that's able to be happening, then you have the unfortunate and kind of scary option of what does it look like to close? And what does that mean? And what does that look like? And I think a lot of people are scared of that because it looks like failure, but the Lord can work wonders through that as well. And it is a sad reality that a ministry in that particular building, in that particular spot, may not be there, but that doesn't mean something else may not come back. So that's kind of what we're working through, at least what I'm prayerfully working through with trying to facilitate that, because I told him I don't have any answers really. I'm just here to help you walk through it and get you in contact with folks that might, or pray about it, or maybe the Lord will lead us to think of some new creative options or creative solutions for what ministry might look like. Because there's a lot of need for God's word to be preached in the city of Baltimore. It's just the way that we've been doing it right now is very difficult because we have aging buildings. So I'm trying to view it with like just a perspective shift on where are the opportunities at. And kind of rephrasing things. Sometimes it's semantics, instead of what are our problems, what are our challenges. But when you do rephrase it and think about things differently, you can look at things a little differently, and you might have better options, or better way to think about it when you do it that way. That's just kind of like an overview. I think there's a bunch of stuff I forgot to talk about. But I know for like my congregation of St. James, we've been the Lord's been with us as he always is, but we had some big, building issues the last couple of years. We had a big old roof leak with some ice and wind that, our slate roof was approaching 100 years, the original slate roof, beautiful, but also it's got its age, and it took out some paint and plaster, took our organ out for the last 2 years. So we've just been using the piano. Yeah. And, so we had water damage to work through, and an insurance claim and raising funds then to kind of pay for the organ and repair that. So we're hopeful, we're prayerful, and we're close. I think we'll have the organ for Easter this year, which is going to be a great thing. But I've seen the ministry in Baltimore, and just being a pastor out there, is you do what you can with what you got, and you do it all to the glory of God, and you just roll with the punches. That's kind of what I've told my folks at St. James. You just roll with the punches. We just got another one this past week that I'm like, well, because we're almost done with this one punch that we just got over, we're rising back up. There's another one coming, but we're ready for it. And you just kind of have to have that mentality in, I think, any congregation, any pastoral setting, but especially if you're kind of in a city area too, where the folks that are coming in may not be from the immediate area, and there's a little bit of a disconnect, or maybe a distrust or whatever it is, just with the communities that are there. And how do you bridge those gaps? And how do you kind of foster new relationships with the community that you have and give them what they need, whether or not they know they need it or not, which is God's word and the peace of the forgiveness of sins. So it's an ongoing process, and there's a lot of great guys that we've had out, in the Baltimore area for a bunch of years. Pastor Roy Coates is he's a
fun guy.
He is a fun guy, and he's great at what he does. And he has a congregation in West Baltimore, and I think they're a majority it's Liberian refugees or immigrants that he's had, and he's from Sweden. Mm-hmm. And so like just the disconnect there, but they love him and he loves them, and just he's been able to foster a great community and really just do a lot of great things there. And it looks completely different than what that church did a long time ago. But it's just kind of, when you have a heart for doing the right thing and you're there for the folks, you can really, do a lot of things. The Lord works through that, just a willing servant spirit. So that's kind of like the 500-foot, viewpoint of ministry in Baltimore. So,
and I think, the one takeaway, and then we got to run here. Bennett is actually going to be skating on the Minnesota Wild Ice here in like an hour and a half. So we've got to get him to St. Paul. So he'll get himself to St. Paul. He's a big boy. But yeah, I mean, international mission is really important, but I think we also have to remember that domestic mission is also really important. There's a lot of money out there, and it can go a long way in places like Baltimore, and certainly not just Baltimore, but you can see the examples to where, like if you can help with some of those things, if you can help support a pastor's salary for 3 years and give a church a chance or something like that, like there's a lot of opportunity for domestic work here.
We have, I know we're short on time, but we just recently called another pastor to St. James to be our assistant pastor for mission, and we called him up from South America to kind of be the pastor, to be the called pastor to St. James, but really be positioned and regulated to Nazareth Lutheran Church in Highlandtown, which is a really majority Spanish speaking community and a Hispanic community. And even therein, though, there's changes as well. So I've told him, hey, just keep an eye out on what's going on in the community and just be able to pivot when you need to. He's really excited to be here, but we aren't able to do that at St. James alone. We've had help from some of those auxiliary, mission posts like the Winnikin Project, or even the district has stepped up and stepped in to help, cover that salary, because it's a need. We need to get some pastors out there, and then how do we do it creatively? So it's been an exciting thing. We're still kind of working through that whole process since he's only been here since September. So yeah, it's been fun.
Well, Pastor Eric Bednash, this is fun.
Yep.
Let's go get some dinner.
All right.